Hello, big riggers. Thanks for joining me, Jim Campbell, as we talk all things trucking. Another trucking company just shut down. That makes 3 in the past 6 months alone. In this video, we will seek out and answer the question of why are so many trucking companies hitting the brakes on their operations and filing for bankruptcy or going out of business? Well, it turns out that hauling freight across the country isn't as smooth a ride as it used to be. In fact, the trucking industry is facing a serious crisis with a wave of bankruptcies hitting companies both big and small. Please remember to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Also, please leave me a comment below about any issues you have seen with the company you work for or issues about other companies that you have heard about, and I will include your thoughts or comments in the update to this video. Please watch this video all the way to the end in order to fully grasp the situation the trucking industry finds itself in. "2023 was a particularly brutal year for the industry, with several high-profile companies going belly up. And it's not just a blip on the radar. It's a full-blown trend. The most recent casualty of this trucking turmoil is APL Cargo Inc., a company that was once a major player in the game. But before we dive into the specifics of their demise, let's take a broader look at the state of the industry and why so many companies are struggling to stay afloat. This impacts all of us because when trucks stop moving, so do the goods and services that we rely on every single day. So buckle up, because we're about to take a deep dive into the world of trucking bankruptcies, and trust me, it's a ride that's going to be anything but smooth. Now, let's circle back to APL Cargo Inc., a company that met an untimely end this year. They were a significant player in the trucking scene. But despite their seeming success, cracks began to show in their carefully constructed facade. It turns out APL wasn't using sound business strategy, which led to a whole fleet of problems hitting them at the same time. We're talking about rising fuel costs, driver shortages, and let's not forget the ever-present issue of cutthroat competition within the industry. It's enough to make you want to slam the brakes on starting your own trucking company. Now, you might be thinking, sure, one company going bankrupt is unfortunate, but it doesn't necessarily spell doom for the entire industry. And normally, you'd be right. But APL isn't an isolated incident. They're more like the proverbial canary in the coal mine, a warning sign of a much larger problem plaguing the trucking industry. Their downfall is a big-time reminder of the challenges facing trucking companies in today's economic climate. And if we don't pay attention to these warning signs, we might just find ourselves in a world where the only thing moving faster than a speeding truck is the price of consumer goods. Unfortunately, APL wasn't alone in its struggles. 2023 was a particularly brutal year for the trucking industry, with closures happening faster than you could shake a stick at. We're talking about some big names, familiar logos on the side of trucks you've probably cursed at for hogging the slow lane. Take Yellow Corp, for example. They were one of the largest trucking companies in the U.S., a real titan of the industry. But even titans can crumble, and crumble they did, filing for bankruptcy after years of struggling with debt and operational inefficiencies. It was a collapse of epic proportions, leaving thousands of workers unemployed and sending shockwaves throughout the industry. And it's not just the big players feeling the heat. Smaller trucking companies, the lifeblood of the industry, are also struggling to keep their engines running. These smaller companies, often family-owned and operated, are facing the same headwinds as their larger counterparts, but with fewer resources to weather the storm. So what's behind this wave of bankruptcies and closures? Well, it's a perfect storm of economic pressures, industry challenges, and frankly, some questionable decision-making from the companies themselves. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's just say that the road ahead for the trucking industry is not looking too rosy. All right, let's address the elephant in the room, or should I say, the 18-wheeler blocking the intersection. These trucking bankruptcies aren't coming out of nowhere. It's like a truck stop buffet plate, but instead of being piled high with food, that plate is filled with a toxic combination of economic factors. First, we've got the hangover of the pandemic boom. Remember when everyone was ordering everything from inflatable pool swans to tie-dye sweatsuits online? Trucking companies went into overdrive, expanding fleets and hiring more drivers. But what goes up must come down. Then add a dash of inflation, because why not? The cost of everything from fuel to tires to insurance are squeezing the hell out of already thin profit margins. Turns out, spending weeks on the road in a cramped cabin, getting by with truck stop coffee and questionable restrooms doesn't exactly scream dream job to most people. It's a tough sell, and it's a major factor in this whole mess. Now, let's talk about rising operational costs. What the politicians in Congress don't realize or understand is this. If he or she thinks filling up the gas tank on their car is painful, imagine the sting of fueling a vehicle that can haul 80,000 pounds of consumer goods across America's highways. Diesel prices have not been stable since Joe Biden and his green agenda took office, and the cost of diesel is taking a big bite out of trucking companies' bottom lines. But fuel is just the tip of the iceberg. We've also got maintenance costs to consider. Keeping these trucks on the road is expensive, complicated, and prone to unexpected breakdowns. And then there's the human cost, because yes, believe it or not, even in this age of self-driving everything, someone still needs to actually drive the trucks. Truck drivers deal with grueling hours, long stretches of isolation, and the constant threat of being turned into a meme by someone in a passing car. It all adds up, and unfortunately, it seems like the only thing being hauled away in these bankruptcies are the hopes and dreams of countless trucking companies. Okay, here's a fun fact that's also deeply depressing if you happen to be a trucking company, and that is the fact that online e-commerce is booming. We're talking about a level of online shopping that would make even the most dedicated mall rat blush. It's adding a whole new layer of pressure on the trucking industry. Think about it for a moment. Every online click, every add to cart click, and every impulsive online purchase represents another package that needs to be shipped and delivered. And who's doing the heavy lifting, literally and figuratively? You guessed it, the trucking industry. This surge in demand means trucking companies are being squeezed from both ends. On one hand, they need to expand their fleets and hire more drivers to keep up with the sheer volume of packages. But on the other hand, they're facing the same economic headwinds we've been talking about. Rising fuel prices, driver shortages, and enough red tape to wrap around the entire continental United States. It's a classic case of the old catch-22. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. So the next time you see someone order that singing fish or lizard on a plaque that doubles as a bottle opener, remember to tell them to thank the next trucker they see. Now, you might think, well, if the big trucking companies are struggling, surely the little guys are picking up the slack. And yes, smaller trucking companies, often owner-operators with a handful of trucks, are vital to the industry. Some trucking companies run smaller vans and are like the capillaries of the supply chain, delivering to city locations that big rigs can't get into. But here's the kicker. Being small in a sector dominated by giants comes with its own set of unique challenges. Imagine trying to arm wrestle a gorilla who also happens to set the price for bananas. That's essentially the reality for many small carriers. They often lack the negotiating power of their larger counterparts, especially when it comes to securing contracts and fuel prices. These smaller companies often operate on thinner margins, making them more susceptible to economic downturns and fluctuations in fuel costs. And let's not forget the ever-increasing regulatory burdens, which hit smaller companies disproportionately hard. So, while the big boys are busy tripping over their own shoelaces, the little guys are trying not to get trampled in the process. It's a real David and Goliath situation, except in this version, Goliath is heavily in debt and keeps forgetting to pay his fuel bill. Now, let's talk about boxes, specifically the ones on wheels. The box truck market, think about those logo emblazoned vehicles you see zipping around your neighborhood, like UPS or FedEx. Both have been experiencing significant growth. This surge in box trucks is driven in part by, you guessed it, the rise of e-commerce sites like Amazon. As more people opt for the seductive convenience of online shopping, the demand for local and regional deliveries skyrockets. And who better to answer the call of the doorbell than a fleet of box trucks? But here's the thing, the growth of the box truck market is a bit of a double-edged sword. On one hand, It represents an opportunity for smaller players to carve out a niche in the industry. It's a lower barrier to entry than, say, wrangling a fleet of 18-wheelers. On the other hand, this influx of new vehicles also contributes to congestion, particularly in urban areas. So, while the box truck boom might seem like a boon for the industry, it's also a reminder of the evolving landscape and the need for sustainable solutions. Now, let's talk about a problem that's as old as trucking itself, and that is theft. You might picture a couple of guys in ski masks prying open a back door with crowbars, but cargo theft is often a much more sophisticated operation. These modern-day pirates employ everything from GPS jammers to inside information, making off with consumer goods worth millions of dollars annually. And we're not just talking about luxury items here. Everything from food and beverages to electronics and pharmaceuticals is fair game for these sticky-fingered bandits. The financial impact of cargo theft is staggering, costing the industry billions of dollars each year. Think of it as a hidden tax on every single thing you buy. That new phone you've been eyeing up? Well, its price just went up a few bucks to cover the cost of some guy's new yacht, acquired via stolen toilet paper. And it's not just the direct financial losses that hurt. Cargo theft also leads to increased insurance premiums, delays in shipments, and a whole lot of paperwork. So the next time you see a truck driver giving you the once-over with his eyes, cut them some slack. They're not just battling traffic and deadlines, they're also fighting off a shadowy cabal of cargo crooks. So we've talked about the trucking industry's woes. Okay, let's zoom in on one company that's become the poster boy for this whole damn mess, Yellow Corp. Now, Yellow wasn't exactly a spring chicken in the industry. It had a long history, dating back to, get this, the 1920s. But despite its pedigree, Yellow found itself hauling a mountain of debt. They'd made some, shall we say, questionable business decisions over the years. Like that time they took on billions in debt to buy a bunch of other trucking companies, presumably thinking, what could go wrong? And let's not forget the management issues. The sad truth is, Yellow's struggles are a microcosm of the larger problems plaguing the industry. It's what happens when you combine economic inflation issues with some seriously questionable decision-making. Buckle up, folks, because this ride's about to get bumpy. So, where does the trucking industry go from here? Well, if we've learned anything from this dumpster fire of a situation, it's that changing with the times is the real key. Obviously, we need to kick the politicians out of office that keep passing the stupid rules, regulations, and laws that has brought our economy and our country to its knees. Secondly, the trucking industry needs to get serious about innovation. And I'm not talking about the all-green agenda with an all-electric mandate either. They need to find ways to improve efficiency, reduce costs, and maybe, just maybe, start treating their drivers like human beings instead of replaceable cogs in a giant shipping machine. And let's not forget about the little guy. Small trucking companies are getting squeezed from all sides and twice on Sunday. They need support to compete in this increasingly cutthroat market. Whether it's access to better financing options or government policies that don't make them want to ram their heads into the closest wall, something needs to change. The future of trucking is uncertain, that much is clear. But one thing's for sure, it's going to take a whole lot more than a fresh coat of paint to cure what ails the trucking industry. Well, there you have it, a glimpse into the precarious state of the trucking industry. We've covered bankruptcies, rising costs, cargo theft, and enough corporate drama to make your head swim. And trust me, there's even more to unpack than what we could fit into this video. But this isn't just about numbers and logistics, my friends. It's about the livelihoods of millions of people who keep this country moving in the right direction. Please remember to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Also, please leave me a comment below about any issues you have seen with the company you work for or issues about other companies that you have heard about, and I will include your thoughts or comments in the update to this video. Take care. Thanks a lot. Remember, like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell below.